The first thing is generally emerging contaminants. We don't really have any standardized analytical testing methods, so we need to develop those things, right? I think the second thing that we see with analytical instruments is typically there is this drive to measure lower and lower levels of these analytical contaminants. An example of PFAS, where PFAS, we are now routinely measuring these at like low nanogram per liter levels. Historically, other environmental contaminants, we've typically looked at them at the microgram per liter levels, right? So we're looking at contaminants now 1,000 times lower than what we've looked at historically. So now we need not only our analytical instruments to be able to identify these emerging contaminants, but then measure them at thousands of times lower. And this is where our GCMSs, our GC triple quadrupoles, LC triple quadrupole innovations with the 7010 high efficiency source, the 6495D, they help with that sensitivity, right? But as I've also mentioned, sensitivity is nothing without robustness. And so for these emerging contaminants, when we don't have standard methods initially, creating and working with collaborators to focus on having more harmonized methods is critical. And so one of the things, again, is Agilent's really always focused on is we've worked very closely with regulatory agencies, whether they be EPA, USDA, folks in Europe, China. But we've also worked with a lot of research collaborators to develop these analytical methods so that we can get standardized testing for emerging contaminants, right? The third issue with emerging contaminants is you need to actually be able to identify what the next emerging contaminant is, right? And this is where kind of our focus with working with research collaborators, leveraging our analytical expertise on the high resolution mass spectrometry tools, and also our software and sample preparation makes it easier for them, and it makes it easier for non-mass spectrometrists to go and then identify these new chemicals, right? Whether they be microplastics, PFAS, or whatever else the other thing might be. And then the last one I will say is, just focusing on the improvements that we do from an analytical science perspective, but thinking of them more from a customer perspective on trying to improve their productivity, right? So it's one thing to measure an analytical contaminant, but ultimately we need to be able to do that routinely, repeatedly across the world, right? That's the way we collect information and data for emerging contaminants to know then what to do with them from a regulatory perspective.